I'm back with a new video. This one's going to be my best books of historical romance. No, this one's going to be my best historical romances of 2023. Jesus, I don't even know how to speak anymore. I'm back from a long hiatus, so welcome back. And I just posted my best books of 2023, which is just solely focusing on contemporary romances. So if you haven't checked that out already, please go to my page, go click on that video, go watch it, because I've talked a lot about some, near and dear books that have really changed and shaped my reading life in 2023 in that video. I don't know why I got so deep all of a sudden. It's just romance novels that I really enjoyed. That brought me out of a slump. Anyways, so this video is going to be solely focusing on historical romances that I've read that I haven't really been speaking a lot about since my hiatus, but also because I don't know why. But this year, I'm going to try to read more historical romances. This year, I'm trying to spark my romance for historical romances again. But we're going to start off with a very strong recommendation. This one's called What a Lady Wants by Victoria Alexander. This is book 2 in her Last Man Standing series, which is a quartet. It involves 4 guys who make a bet to see who will be the last one to be married. So this one obviously involves a bachelor who does not want to be married at all. He's having a nice little summer fling with someone who's already married. He doesn't care about that, but he wants to, save his butt, and he wants to save his reputation. So when he gets caught by the husband, he jumps out of her window and he runs across this lawn, and our heroine is just standing from her bedroom window watching this stranger running across her family's lawn. And she's like, what is happening? And then it's only until our hero climbs up her window do they really finally meet. And does she really get to take in how beautiful the stranger is? She really longs for adventure. This is the perfect opportunity for her because our hero is just so reckless. Our hero is just so energetic. Our hero is just adventurous on its own. And so she actively tries to pursue him afterwards. She wants to marry him, and he doesn't want to be married. But let me tell you, when he has fallen, he has fallen. When he has messed up, he has definitely messed up. The amount of pain I felt for these 2 characters when she finally decided that enough was enough and that she wasn't going to be chasing anymore, and then it became our hero's turn to chase. That pain was visceral. I remember I cried so much when our hero had to beg for forgiveness because of the thing that he said and the thing that he did, and our heroine was just so brokenhearted from it that she really lost a chunk of trust that she had for him. And it was just so good. It's so good. One of the best romances that I've read this year. One of the best historical romances that I have also read in my lifetime. The next book in this series is called Secrets of a Proper Lady, and I really enjoyed this one too. Not as much as the second one, but this one's definitely a recommended read too as well. This one involves our heroine who doesn't want to marry, okay? Our hero and heroine do not want to marry each other, but they are betrothed by the families. They want to have that union, right? So she's very skeptical of this hero, this, mysterious suitor, this husband, this fiance. So she pretends to be her own lady's maid, and she dresses up like a servant, and she goes out and she wants to go interact with his butler, or not his butler, but his male version of a servant / secretary person. And so she thinks that she has bumped into his secretary, and so they spark up a conversation. She asks all these questions, and then he is pretending to be the secretary because the secretary, is actually the hero, and he is answering all these questions. And they're having this really nice conversation. So our hero ends up falling in love with the lady's maid, and then the lady's maid, which is our heroine, falls in love with the secretary of the hero. And it's only until the charades fall apart where he realizes that she is not actually a lady's maid and that she is actually his fiance. So there's a sigh of relief because he is just so happy that he is not in this really dramatic relationship and that he's actually fallen for the right person. Now, the only problem is that even though he wants to be a bachelor, he also wants to be with her. So now he has to kind of get over his feelings over the stupid bet that he has made with his friends about being the last man standing. So it's such a fun and quirky novel. I don't know. If you guys are a fan of like Julia Quinn and like how these characters always get themselves into trouble and then like they're just like having fun with it, you'll definitely love this one. This one was definitely very entertaining, lighthearted, and it's a definite pick-me-up for when you are in a reading slump. Okay, the next book is a little bit weird. This is book number 4 in the series, called Seduction of a Proper Gentleman, and I have to put it in my best books too as well because I thought it was just so entertaining. This one was really fun. This one involves our heroine who is engaged to this man, and she decides to travel into the city to go meet her fiance. And it's then where she falls off the train, she bumps her head, and she has amnesia. She doesn't know who she is anymore. She doesn't know what her name is. She doesn't know what she does. But she falls down and she gets picked up and they bring her into our hero's like house because our hero's like mom is just like super nice and super welcoming, and our hero is the last man standing because all 3 of his friends have already been married from books 1 to 3. So he is very skeptical of like really single women because he doesn't want to be, you know, chained and locked up. He has this like bro personality where he's just like, I don't want to be locked up. But as soon as he sees her, he is like smitten with her because she's just so beautiful. She's so interesting. She's so smart. She's definitely not like a servant because she knows a lot of languages. She knows a lot about the world. She knows culture. And she's just so great. So there's something about her. So they're like trying to figure out who she is, and he works with her to try to regain her memory because he's thinking to himself, the faster she regains her memory, the faster she will leave the house and leave him alone, and the faster his emotions will go back to being normal. And then obviously their feelings get entangled and there's a chemistry and they start falling for each other, and it's then when she kind of gets hit with like fresh memories and she starts remembering bits and pieces of herself, and then there's this like whole drama towards the end where our hero really just has this really push and pull effect. It was very angsty towards the end, if I remember it correctly. Or not very angsty, but it was angsty towards the end, which kept it really entertaining and really lovely. So overall, the quartet is really good. Book number 1 was just like all right for me, but books 2 to 4 was where the author found her stride and where I just really enjoyed the stories. And I'm definitely going to read more Victoria Alexander this year because of this quartet. I think for this video, I'm also going to talk a lot about books that are from the same authors because what I ended up doing was reading a lot of series, and then I read a lot of really strong series, or I read a lot of individual books from authors that I individually loved, but it's from the same author. So the next series I want to talk about is this one from Valerie Bowman. It's called the Whittemore series. It's about this family of siblings, or this family that's just full of siblings, and individually they all fall in love. So I don't know how many books there are. I think there's only 4 books. I thought there was going to be more, but the first book is called The Duke Deal, and this was the pick that Rachel and I from Rachel Reads and Sings picked for our historical romance club for December. And this is the second chance romance. This one involves our hero and heroine who got married because they fell in love. You know, it was a normal marriage, but then on the day of their wedding, or like, you know, close to the day of their wedding, or like days after the wedding, whatever, it's just like very close to their union, she realizes that he lied to her and that he went back to his mistress that he had before he met her. Okay. And then so she is just so heartbroken by it because she told him that she doesn't want him to have a mistress. She wants him for herself. And he doesn't understand that, or at least that's what she thinks. So they go their separate ways. For 2 whole years, they do not contact each other. They're still married under the law, but like they just don't talk to each other. It's until her dying grandfather realizes that he wants to spend like one last Christmas with everybody. So she has to go back into the city, and she basically tells him, hey, like, you know, you have to fulfill this like role as my husband. You have to spend Christmas with my family. He, on the other hand, is like, you know, okay, if I'm going to do that, then we are going to have to actually consummate our marriage, and that you're going to have to do the part of where you're supposed to do, which is provide me an heir. And she reluctantly agrees, and she thinks that she's going to just like give birth to a child and then live their separate lives again. It's there where in the house during Christmas time, where they're forced to be with each other more. They're forced to learn more about each other in the past 2 years that they have been separated. And we get glimpses of them like falling in love in the past, in their past history. So you feel like this like special tenderness towards the characters, and you really want them to just have a conversation to talk about that one fateful night where he lied and where she thinks that he cheated on her. It was just angsty. It was good, but it was fun. It was short, so it wasn't long. It winded. It wasn't dragged out, and I loved it. And that's exactly why I read books 2 to 4 soon right after the live show. So I think I liked the second book as much as I liked the first book, The Duke Deal. The second book is called The Marquis Move, and this one is about our hero falling in love with a lady's maid. And it's like a different class situation because our hero is a marquis and then our heroine is, down there. Our heroine recently got fired from her job, so she's looking for a new job. It's our hero's younger sister who decides to hire her as the lady's maid, where they kind of meet in the same house. And it's where he is trying so hard to be a really good employer and to not take advantage of her. But like their attraction for each other is just so strong. Our heroine actually has like a secret history. She is a baron's daughter, but what happened was that her family fell under, like financially it's just not great. So she had to kind of come out and support herself because she didn't want to live under her uncle's thumb. So she decides to kind of be independent and kind of forget the past of luxury and her own misfortune. So our hero and heroine are interacting with each other constantly, and then our heroine decides to throw caution to the wind and decides to take her own independence and to really decide to take control of her own life. So she tries to seduce him, and then obviously they have like a really great relationship and chemistry, but then he feels that he needs to now kind of like do his duty and to make sure that this lady he's made is taken care of. But our heroine is just so headstrong. Absolutely loved it. I love the story. It moves so quickly. It moves so interestingly. Our characters were definitely very like independently strong characters. That was just so refreshing. And that's exactly what made me read book number 3 right after this one. So book number 3 was my least favorite one out of the whole series, but it was still a solid 4 out of 5 stars. Every other book I gave like 4.5 out of 5 stars. This one's called the Deiton Dilemma. This one is an enemies to lovers romance. Our heroine wants to present herself well and to go find a husband, and she has been dreaming up of this like duke or like this like lord or whatever for a very long time, and she has really high expectations for him until she meets him face to face and he insults her right to her face, and he like touches like a part of her dress, and she just thinks that she just got like attacked. So she slaps him and she makes like this whole scene on the dance floor in this ball, and it's like the talk of the town. So he's humiliated because he was drunk, he didn't know what he was doing, and he wants to make amends to it. So he always constantly follows her around and tries to say, I'm sorry, can you please accept my apology? And she's very hard-headed, she's very stubborn, she says no. They keep bickering, they keep fighting. Every time he tries to apologize, he makes an ass of himself because he doesn't know what the right words are to say. And then finally they come into understanding that they can at least try to become friends, if not like engaged couple. When they become friends, they soon realize that they have such a strong chemistry with each other that they can no longer just be friends, and that they might want to move to the next level. And then that's where we kind of have, we're reverting back to enemies. Like, I felt like that they had a lot of push and pull. I felt like that they were ice and fire, or like fire and water a lot of the times, which was really interesting, but it kind of got a little bit tiresome towards the end. But still, such a great story. I know this is my best books of historical romance, and I shouldn't be talking about negative aspects of this book, but still a good story, and definitely would recommend you check this one out. Then I read the last book in the series, which is called The Wallflower Wind. And this one involves our heroine who really loves to read books, and she is having a great time escaping the ball and not looking for a husband in the library. And it's there where she meets her future husband, who is playing chess. And so he thinks really little of her because she's a female. So he challenges her into a game of chess. And it's there where she really shows who's boss, and she wins the game of chess. And he's very impressed by her. He doesn't want any marriage whatsoever because he thinks that he is completely not suitable to be married to someone because he has like desires that are way too taboo, and he doesn't want to be in a loveless and like hateful marriage where he despises his wife. So he decides that he's just not going to marry. But he also wants to have fun, and he's also really attracted to our heroine. Our heroine is very unconventional too, as well. She doesn't want to get married as well. She doesn't want to be a man's property, and she wants him. So she always tries to pursue him. She always tries to seduce him, but he's very strong, and he's like, no, I don't want anything to do with you. You're silly for even trying to be with me. And so it's angsty towards the end because when they realize that they both really like each other, but they also realize that they're both very stubborn in their ways about marriage because soon one person wants to be married and the other person doesn't want to be married. So the next couple books I'm going to talk about is actually books that were written by Stacy Reed. So during this year, I did the Stacy Reed binge where I read a lot of her indie published romances, and I love her indie published romances compared to her Entangled published romances. But the latest book that she wrote with Entangled Romance, called An Earl to Remember, was definitely one that I really enjoyed. So this one is about our heroine who is owed a sum of debt from our hero. And then they have like a enemies to lovers romance in the beginning because they despise each other, and obviously he owes her money, but then I don't think he wants to pay. I forgot about what this book is about already. I apologize. But he ends up falling off the boat and loses his memory. And then when he loses his memory, it's then when she enacts her revenge because then she basically makes him work off the amount of money that he needs to pay her back. And then it's there where they kind of develop their romance. So obviously I forgot a lot about this book and I apologize for that. But I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, but the next book that I read from Stacy Reed that I really enjoyed is this one called The Duke and I. This one is about a heroine who has no prospect, and she decides to kind of throw caution to the wind. She decides that she just wants to get what she wants, which is trying to seduce her older brother's best friend. But the problem is the older brother's best friend is playing really hard to get, so she has to try really hard in order to seduce him. And if you're like a fan of this trope, you're gonna love it because it was just so fun and so entertaining. And Stacy's like independently published romances are not that long, so this one did not feel like it was dragged out at all, but it still had like that emotional impact that all Stacy's books have. And then the next book that I read from her is called How to Marry a Marquess, which kind of follows the same trope, which is the fact that our heroine has been in love with her brother's best friend for a very long time. She refuses to marry anybody except for her brother's best friend. And her brother's best friend is like the dark and recluse type who wants nothing to do with society, who's being shunned by society, and she is just kind of like a lamb to slaughter. She is just gonna be in danger if she keeps surrounding herself with him, but she can't stay away. And it's there where he decides to kind of throw all precaution out the door and just kind of take her into his lair. And it's just so good. I loved it so much. Then another one that I really enjoyed was this one called The Wolf and the Wildflower. And this one is published by Entangled Romance, but it wasn't done through like mass paperback copies, which is kind of really sad because this one was really good. And I really want to own like a mass paperback version of it. This one involves our heroine who is an intellectual. Like she is like a scholarly type, but because she's a female, she has to kind of dress up like a guy, most of the time to be taken seriously. And then our hero is actually like a duke, I believe. But what happened was that he was lost like at sea for like the majority of his adult teen life. When he was a child, he was on a boat, he fell off the boat, he washed up on this land, and then he kind of grew up with like animals, and he grew up like with the tribes people on the land, so he's not really like accustomed to London's culture and societies and raising. So he's very wild, and then what ends up happening is that he's rescued, he's brought into the big city London, and he's trying to get acclimated with the fact that he's no longer in the forest anymore and that he needs to hunt animals to survive and to eat. So then afterwards what ends up happening is that our heroine is hired to be his tutor to kind of welcome him back into society, to ease him back into society and to teach him about society and things like that. and where they spark this kind of Jane and Tarzan relationship, and it's just so good. It was so fun. I really enjoyed it, and you definitely need to read it if you haven't already. The next book that I read that was really, really good was this one that I read in the beginning of the year. This one's called Kiss to Remember by Teresa Muras. Now, Teresa Muras' books do not have audiobooks, which is very sad, but reading the books definitely make it really enjoyable and special. This one involves our hero, who is an asshole. He's an asshole because he grew up with a uncle that showed no love, and the uncle was just kind of there to provide for him. So he kind of was really upset as a child, especially because the first couple of years of his life, he was in this really loving family. His mom and his dad and him were living in this really small cottage, and they were just having a great time. But then what ended up happening was that the uncle really needed an heir to his lineage. So the uncle decides to pay like a handsome sum of money to the parents so that they can pay off their debts. And then the uncle takes the son, basically, right? And then the son is our hero, and the son kind of grows up in this coldless, heartless world. He resents his parents, or his late parents, for giving him up so easily. So when the time comes to kind of like take back the family cottage, he holds he holds nothing back, and he wants to take it back. On his way to the cottage, what ends up happening is that he falls off his horse, and he bumps his head on like a tree trunk, and he loses his memory of who he was and who he is. And our heroine, who currently resides in that cottage that was given to her from her late employer, which was his mom, decides that she's gonna take him in, she's gonna take care of him, and then pretend that he's like her husband, so that she can try to save the cottage. And it was just really this like really fun story, because our hero is so like confused, because he knows that he's intellectual, like he knows like a lot of things, he's very smart. He doesn't think that he's just like a normal like blue collar man who's just building and like raising things and cutting things and doing things around the household. He knows that he had a proper education, so he doesn't really truly believe this story that she's painting. It's like this quirky, zany story involving our heroine's family too as well, because all of their characters get involved in the story. Honestly, I cried towards the end because it's just so emotional and so loving. But anyways, that is it for all the best historical romance books that I've read this year. Let me know if you read any of these books and which one you would recommend to me in the comments down below. And I'll see you guys again next time in a new video. Bye.